we need to be part of that. We need to buy the software. Maybe you heard phrases like that in the past, or maybe even in the very recent past in your business. We're talking about hype businesses, and thank you very much for the emails I received about that during the last, especially couple of days. However, I saw the news by myself. There was a big hype around one company, and we're talking about hype business versus sustainable business. And of course, especially when you buy into a hype and it turns out you were wrong, and we had quite a number of these examples in the recent past, then you might put your whole organization in danger. And many people who have no stake in the decision of joining the hype suddenly are affected by your leader's decision, or maybe even your decision to join that hype, and suddenly you can't get the money together to cover the damage. And what I'm talking about is WeWork goes into insolvency. WeWork is bankrupt. They declared bankruptcy recently. There was a gigantic hype about WeWork when they started. Years of scandals followed. I remember when I was in New York City this year, mid of this year, they said that they have severe doubts, and they had to announce that because they're a publicly listed, stock exchange listed company. Their CFO had to announce that they have severe doubts about being in business in 1 year, and not even half of that time later, well, insolvency, bankruptcy, here we are. The main question remains, how can we spot hypes? Because we all know when you jump on a hype and you're wrong, it might cost a lot of money, a lot of time, most likely both. However, it can put your whole organization in danger, interrupt your supply chain, or interrupt your actual business delivery. Unfortunately, and that's one major issue, is that leaders often like hypes, because often the hype spreads amongst these leader one person to the next. It's a feeling of, I'm part of this, we're a community, I'm part of that club where anyone does X, Y, Z. And there's also scientific evidence for that. It's called FOMO, fear of missing out. You probably know that when you have children and they have a smartphone, you might see that quite frequently they are on social media, especially TikTok and Instagram, with the stories, or reels as they are called. And you wonder, why are they always watching this? Well, because they fear that they miss out on something if they do not. And when you now say, well, how could they? We all know that there were hypes in free enterprise as well. Hypes that remove billions of dollars, euros, yen, whatever currency you work in, British pound, take whatever you want. It wiped billions off the market when the hype came to an end. I remember when I pretty much started out in my industry and not only became self-employed on the side, but also started to work in free enterprise. The burst of the dot-com bubble simply meant that billions of currency, of any currency, disappeared pretty much overnight. Countless companies went bankrupt. A couple of years later, we had the big bubble of the real estate hype, which brought the whole banking system into turmoil. That was in 2008. Maybe you remember that. There are significant problems with hypes. Hypes might feel good. However, hypes, and when we talk about problems, we're going to talk about after that how to do it better. Hypes have no substance. As soon as you have the guru of this or the leading object of XYZ, anyone has to do this now, anyone has to do that now, most likely it's wrong. Hypes have no substance. Hypes are often relying purely on marketing. Very rarely, and then you normally don't have a hype. As soon as someone can deliver valid and reliable data, where you talk about supply chains, where you talk about customer value, where you talk about sustainable value, the sustainable investment, et cetera, where many people now will say, well, that's quite boring. Exactly, because a hype is fascinating, while data analysis normally is not as fascinating, except for data analysts and some people who are around that. I give you that. However, as soon as you have a hype, it's hardly ever about numbers. It's always about either people or ego. And the people either can be the people who created the whole service or the company, or the people who use that company's services. So, for example, when we started with Instagram stories or TikTok, you saw countless people going on these platforms promoting it. And the people who created that, you probably can't even tell me who created TikTok. And quite frankly, I had to look it up as well. So you will always have an ego-driven part where an emotion is somewhere around and it feels good, and then someone pushes you into it. The main problem is, as soon as there's a hype and you were wrong, the hype is gone as quickly as it was there. And I can tell you, because it's always easy to tell people, hey, look, there are hypes anywhere, but my industry is just perfect. Of course, it's not. In my industry, we had a massive hype during the pandemic, and it was called Clubhouse. Clubhouse is an app. You still find it on the App Store, and the app is had a quite clever idea in the first place. Especially with the pandemic, there was a huge hype around that. You could go on the app, and then you had audio rooms where people could talk, for example, give a speech or talk to each other in the interview format or do a Q&A, question and answers. And people could speak, ask questions, or just be silent, can be muted. There's a host who can turn on and off who's in the room, who's able to speak or not. So quite a number of functionalities, and it was very convenient for many people when they sat at home and thought, what else should I do? Unfortunately, and by the way, hats off to the people who created that, because it was, and here we are, FOMO, fear of missing out. It was only available on the iPhone and only by invite. So you had to know someone who's already on the platform who invites you, and then it was very exclusive. You were part of the club. I am now on Clubhouse. People were posting about that. I got invited countless times, and I just wondered, and that was especially in my industry, why do speakers speak to each other about speaking? That is the most pointless thing I have seen in a long time. And of course, they frame it in a certain way. They frame it like, oh, we learn from each other, and I love to share with my peers, blah, blah, blah. When you have business secrets, you are not sharing them because you have competitors and you will not empower them to do what you do, probably at a cheaper rate or at a better performance and better outcome for the client. So it's only ego. What happened was weeks, months of people sitting on Clubhouse like there's no tomorrow, speaking to each other. And by the way, this even continues today in the real world. You have speaking clubs, associations, or whatever you want to call it, where some person who runs the event makes money and the other speakers show up. By the way, these speakers are most of them show up unpaid. Some events, all of them work unpaid. So when you see people you probably want to book as a speaker and they appear on these events, be sure to ask them to speak for free at your event as well, because when they can speak for free there, they can speak for free for you. And by the way, before you ask me, I do not speak for free except for fundraisers and charity events. So this Clubhouse app went through the roof. And then the pandemic came to the point where online became the new normal, and you had Teams and Zoom, and then we had the first parts of countries opening again, and you were allowed to go outside, etc., etc. And Clubhouse died immediately. When it's still on the App Store, so feel free to use it. By the way, when you now say I never heard of Clubhouse, well, it's not, when it's on your industry, there are always hypes in certain industry where the rest of the world doesn't even realize that the hype is there. Which is also, by the way, a sign of a hype. It is a very particular industry affected by it, and only they care about it. Well, the value of Clubhouse was simply none. Meeting together in an audio room is a function that you could do via Zoom or Teams for years already. By the way, it was very quickly copied. We had Twitter Spaces where you could do exactly the same. So Clubhouse died in beauty, and the company isn't worth much anymore today, or at least not as much as it was before. Nowhere near that, to be precise. The problem is when you now jumped on that hype and you probably adopted your business model to that, and suddenly you realize, well, no one's there anymore. You wasted the money, you wasted the time, and this might put your whole business operations in danger. So how do you spot a hype? Very important is that there are a couple of rules now where you have to be very alert. You have to be very open-minded, not to just say, but I like this, so it's not a hype because I like it. Because some people who I spoke to about this in the past said, oh yeah, I see all the signs, but I think it's a good product, so it's not a hype. So how to spot a hype? First, normally the media of a certain industry is jumping on it. Suddenly, there is no other topic than that. And you probably know from your industry as well, there were certain trends where just very shortly after, no one was talking about anymore. You always have people and ego in the foreground, in the spotlight. It's never about facts or value delivery. It's only about people and their egos. You will very rarely receive any kind of data material. You will not hear about strategy. You will not hear about facts. What you will hear about is marketing, sales, sales, and marketing. Did I mention marketing and sales? Yeah, marketing and sales. plus branding and lots of emotions. Because when you have no facts to offer, no scientific evidence, and probably not a penny to your name, you say sell, 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 because we want to create the hype. The perfect example for that is cryptocurrencies, where they shout to the moon, pump up a certain coin, and then the person who started that sells their assets, and then the coin goes into oblivion and anyone else loses their money. Very sad. Unfortunately, it happened quite frequently. So when you see this hype with no data material, no strategy, no facts, it's only marketing, sales, branding, emotions. And then they say, oh, by the way, it's totally worth it spending your money here. When you are caught by emotions, and probably you heard of these events. In my industry, there are so-called development days or destiny, your future, whatever you call them. Many people brought together, singing, dancing, clapping, write down your goals, be nice to your neighbor, share your goals, share a bit of emotion. You get brought into a very emotional state. And then they say, if you really now want to get to the next level, you have to buy this workshop and normally the first product start with an ebook at $7 or $9. They're always very, very prone to the $7 for no reason. There's no scientific evidence to that. And then it goes up to 99, 97 or whatever. And at the end, people spend tens of thousands. These are people who are so prone to decide by emotions, not by facts, that they lose their money with no benefit. And unfortunately, there's another scientific piece of evidence. It's called sunken cost fallacy. Once you spend money on something, there's a higher likelihood that you spend money again, which is why often people sell a small product first and then you keep on spending. When you, for example, during the pandemic, purchased a bike, maybe a Peloton or any other bike which connects to the internet for fitness classes, and you're still paying the 30, 40, 50 euros per month because it's good to be able to use it, that is the sunken cost fallacy. You could cancel the subscription, but then you have to admit that you did a really bad purchase and probably spend way too much money on it in the first place. The sunken cost fallacy is strong. People who are prone to emotions and do not really reflect well, and they don't control their emotions well, are very, very prone, are a very easy target for any kind of hype. One additional sign is you often see people who have no clue on the matter jumping on a certain topic. So, for example, when at the end of the 90s, I saw friends who never did anything in finance buying stocks, I knew it's a hype. When I suddenly saw people buying cryptocurrency who never did anything in finance, I knew it's a hype. And these people lost money, significant amount of money. When clueless people, non-experts, suddenly jump on something they don't know much about, but the emotions feel so good that you can't miss out here again. FOMO, fear of missing out. They lose the money, you will be next in line, unfortunately. So as soon as people ask for your money, the answer is no. But I know how hard it can be, and we're going to talk about that emotion in a minute, how hard it can be to say no in these moments. So how can you spot sustainable businesses? So first, a sustainable business is always about content, proper content. It can either be a product, a service, or both, which always focuses on customer value. It does not focus on fancy, nice to have stuff. It's nice to have an audio app to chat, but that's first, can be really easily copied. Second, it can't be copyrighted because it is generic product. And third, just chatting to each other in an audio room. I mean, we invented the telephone quite a while ago, and we can do conference calls. It's not that new, to be fair, with countless apps doing exactly the same, just framing it differently. And by the way, when you have a business that focuses on customer value, you might sometimes see, oh, their website isn't too fancy. They don't spend much money on beautiful marketing. No, they care and spend the money on your value, the customer value, instead of fancy marketing and ego of some official sitting at some sort of corporate office ivory tower, which most of these sustainable businesses do not have. So as soon as you see they really spend on the content, the product or the service or both, they don't focus on nice to have stuff. They focus on customer value only. Then the next thing you see is they speak adequately about them. They do marketing, of course, they do advertising, but they never put themselves in the center of attention and say, we are the only one, the center of earth, it's only us, no one else. They also respect privacy, which is especially important in the top tier business. So, for example, you will never see the top wealth advisors of the world. You will never see the top bankers. You will never see the top consultants, trainers, coaches, you will never see them hanging out on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, because the people who really do business have better things to do, solving complex business issues, compared to people who have the time to hang out on TikTok and Instagram and giving you advice like, be a good leader and be a good person and be a good example. It is as generic as it gets. These people have the time because there is no privacy in their business. No one cares about them. So they are relying on the hype. And by the way, one of the worst phrases I heard from my industry, which comes from a speaking association based in Germany, where people said, you have to believe in your own hype so people can believe in your hype. That is the worst way how to rip people off. So when they speak adequately about them, doing advertising, but not going for the ego show, they respect privacy, especially important in the top tier business. And when this kind of understatement, these are three main aspects: understatement, results, and delivery. Delivery, getting things done. When you see these three aspects, understatement, results, and delivery, getting things done, then you might sometimes sit there and think, well, we're doing this thing with the understatement and we deliver great results and we get things done. But I always see the other people getting more exposure than us. So you will have this moment of doubt. You will have moments of doubt. And believe me, I was there many times and I made countless bad decisions on some very, very bad investments on, for example, software driven through a hype in my industry. So when you have when you practice understatement, focus on results and delivery, getting things done, then the doubt that you might do it wrong is part of the game. However, stick to what you can do well. You will see that the others will not sustain in 2, 3, 5, 10 years' time. I had many colleagues who had the amazing hashtag speaker lifestyle. If you really want to question what's going on on this planet, go to speaker lifestyle. It is as much ego as you can imagine. Only about them, not about the client. So when you have these people, be aware that there is always a feeling that you could miss out, which is FOMO, fear of missing out, but also the shiny new object syndrome. And when I only look into my industry, they told me I have to be on Clubhouse, I have to do that, I have to buy myself into marketing material and be a top 10, top 100. You can buy all of these awards. There is no quality control. You put money on the table, you're a top XYZ speaker. Vanity awards left, right, and center. Oh, you have to be on Periscope, Niels, which was a way to be online with video on Twitter. Doesn't even exist anymore. You have to be on Blab for the online meetings. Doesn't even exist anymore. Many of these things I fortunately ignored. Some of them I didn't, and I did bad. I made some bad decisions, no question about that. However, many bullets I dodged because I know about the shiny new object syndrome. Shiny new object syndrome is you see something with someone else and they pretend it works for them with no data backing it. Then you see it with someone else who does exactly the same and the hype begins and you feel, shouldn't I join this? Shiny new object syndrome is exactly what you need to avoid. And I give you the perfect example. In the beginning, I told you WeWork is bankrupt. They declared bankruptcy, insolvency. And of course, you wonder, are there any other market competitors? Yes, Regus, Regus. And many of you will now say, oh, I never heard of them. And some will say, oh, yeah, I heard of them, but they are a bit boring. They don't have like the beer taps and the fancy meetings and all the glass buildings and all that. Yeah, true. Regus is a pretty boring brand. They now have some sub-brands which are a bit cooler, but still, let's say, manager likes The Office cool, not that cool. And you can now say, well, the boring business, what's that about? Well, I can tell you what it's about. $102 million profit, a raise of more than 150% from the year before. If we look into the first 6 months only of this year, they got more clients on board in the whole year of more clients signed up with them only the first 6 months of this year than during the whole last year. So they are doing very well, but you know what they do? Understatement, results, delivery, getting things done. Focus on your strength. Focus on the delivery getting things done and focus on the customer value, because that will always matter no matter when. It is a success factor that has no due date, that always works, and that is always the key to a sustainable business. And I wish you all the best for that. And of course, there's more now. When you say, well, I have a couple of questions about that, Niels, happy to chat with you. Just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we just either exchange emails or write back and forth or have an online meeting. Whatever you prefer, it doesn't cost you a penny. Of course, I also put my LinkedIn down there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I received quite a number of emails last week since I added my LinkedIn to the podcast. They said, oh, do I have to follow you or can I connect with you properly? Please connect properly. When you listen to this, thank you very much for spending your time with me here, but please then connect properly. You find the link to you find my email address and the link to my LinkedIn in the show notes of this podcast. By the way, if you want to talk about something very specific, either it's a training, speaking, coaching, whatever it is, feel free to contact me via these means as well. But we can also just have a chat about whatever you like to talk about. The second aspect, which I always recommend, is that you, of course, we have live sessions. And when you want to know about these live sessions or want to access articles and aspects that I publish and I published about what I talked about today as well, feel free to go to expert.nb-networks.com. I will put this link in the show notes of this podcast as well. When you put your email address in there on expert.nb-networks.com, when you sign up there, you receive only one email every week on a Wednesday morning. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. And in there, you will find free access to anything I publish, plus the link and the access to the live sessions we have, which are available bilingually, either in English or in German. Feel free to just click there, and then I will see you there. And I'm looking forward to doing so. And the last and third step is the most important one, which I always recommend. And the third one means apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive aspect happening and the positive change happening that you want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so and implementing these steps in your organization. If you need any kind of help, let me know. Always available and happy to help. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.